Okay, welcome everyone to our first online shir over here. And I guess one of the most difficult parts of the entire coronavirus outbreak is that everyone's been placed into solitary confinement, which is a very uncomfortable feeling, I would assume, for all of us, for most of us. The Jewish people are known as a nation of achdus, of unity, which means that we are constantly together. The word ach is a brother, it's a sibling, and you add the dalet over there, that's echad, that means that there is a brotherhood, there is a sisterhood, there is a togetherness, a unity that exists amongst Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people. And right now, we find ourselves all confined to our homes, maybe some to offices, but we are apart and we are separate and we're not together the way that we usually are. Which must mean that we've been forced into this situation that Hashem wants us to appreciate the moments and the days and the weeks and really who knows what is ahead of us to have some solitude in our lives. The word in Hebrew is called hisbaidadus, which means when a person goes inside of themselves and begins thinking and begins realizing who they are, what's going on in this world, what is the meaning of life, what am I doing here? And we find something very interesting. If you look at all of our leaders, starting back with Avram Avinu, Abraham, and his son Yitzchak, and his son Yaakov, and you go to Yosef and all of the brothers, and you come to Moshe Rabbeinu, and then you come to David HaMelech, the King David, you find that each and every one of our leaders, they were all, had the unusual profession of being shepherds. Imagine a person going to become the president of the United States. Maybe he'll be a billionaire before he's a president, but you would not expect him to be a shepherd. Someone's going to become a king over a nation. So you expect that he has the background. He has experience. He knows how to run a country. You don't expect that they're going to be a shepherd who's busy taking care of sheep, animals, roaming around in the wild, in the plains, in the fields. So our sages ask, why do we find that all of the leaders of the Jewish people started off being shepherds? And the Sefer Maspik La'evdei Hashem, which was written by the son of the Rambam, writes a beautiful insight. He said, what's the advantage of being a shepherd? He said, a shepherd leaves the city, he leaves the town, he goes out into the open fields to watch the sheep be able to graze in the pastures. There's no noise, there's no city lights, the bars are closed, the amusement parks are closed, there's no sports, the theaters are closed, it's just quiet. And there's solitude. And when a person is in the quiet of this world, they're able to hear two things. Number one, they're able to hear the voice of their neshama. And number two, they're able to hear the voice of Hashem in this world. And perhaps if there's anything that we learn over the next few weeks together, if there's anything that the Jewish people will learn and understand as time is going on in this self-imposed or this forced quarantine and solitude that each and every one of us must be in together with our families, with our spouses, with our children, it's to remind us that there are two voices in this world that have been drowned out for a very long time. With all the noise that the world makes, we don't even hear that precious, soulful voice that calls out from inside of us, called our neshama, and the voice of Hashem, and the guidance and the intuitiveness that we have, the connection that a person has with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that also is something that gets lost over the years. And during this time, let's use it wisely to be able to recommune and reconvene, so to speak, between our souls and the master of the universe, because it must be that he wants us to think about these things very deeply at this point in history. There's a very famous story which took place many years ago, that a young hippie-ish fellow once walked into the famed yeshiva in Jerusalem called Eshet Torah. And he walked swaggering in with his long hair and his jeans, and he sat down in a shiur in a class that Rav Noach Weinberg was giving. Rav Noach Weinberg was the beloved Rosh Yeshiva of Eshet Torah, known for his wisdom and his insight and his overwhelming personality that was filled with warmth and with love and with a deep understanding of the human psyche. And he was giving a class based upon the teachings of the Ramchal, of the author of the Mesilas Yesharim, the Path of the Just, who speaks about the purpose of why we're here in this world. And he was talking about a person's obligation to see and to recognize that there's a God in this world, to see all the goodness that he gives us, all the blessings that he bestows upon us. And once that a person will see that and recognize and realize that, how much we are indebted to God for all that he does, and we will turn that back towards him, and we'll serve him with love, we'll serve him with joy, we'll serve him with all of our hearts and all of our might. This fellow is sitting there in the front row, and not very moved by the words that Rabbi Weinberg is saying. So he turns to Rabbi Weinberg towards the end of the lecture, and he says, Rabbi, he says, I don't have to worry about any of that, because me and Hashem, me and God, we're like this. Weinberg said, really? I've been trying all my life to be like this with Hashem. How did you get like that? So he said, I'll tell you the story. I was on a motorcycle ride, and I was coming around an edge, a big curve on the mountain, and I misjudged the speed and the curve of my bike, and the next thing you know, I was flying off over the side of the edge, over the cliff. And as I was dropping down hundreds of feet, and I thought it was going to be the end of my life, I reached out my hand, and lo and behold, there was a piece of tree sticking out of the side of the mountain, and I grabbed on for dear life. My motorcycle went crashing to the ground, and I was saved. So he said, you see, Rabbi, Hashem and I were like this. So Weinberg looked at this young man, and he said, let me ask you one question. Who do you think pushed you off the mountain to begin with? And that is the question that I'd like to start off all of our learning over here about Pesach, about the nights of the Seder, about the glory of the Jewish people. We're going to spend hours and hours and hours by our Sedarim on the night of the Seder. We don't know what it's going to look like yet. Who's going to be, we don't even know if Eliyahu Navi is going to be allowed to come to our Seder this year. Of course he will be allowed to. But we don't know. Will our friends be there? Will our family be there? Will our parents be there? Will the grandparents? We don't know yet. But one thing we know, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about all of the praises to God that he did one significant act in history that forever altered the course and changed where we are heading. And that is that he brought us out of the house of bondage, out of the nation, the country of Egypt. From slavery, he brought us to freedom. From exile, he brought us to the Exodus, to the redemption. From the enemy, he took us through the splitting of the sea, and he brought us to stand at Mount Sinai to eventually receive the Torah. So we spend the entire night and the entire Yom Tov, the entire holiday, praising God for all of the amazing things that he did, the miracles, the plagues, the wonders, the signs, the outstretched arm, everything that he did. And he did it all for us. And we can't stop thanking him, and we can't stop praising him. But there's one question. Who put us into slavery to begin with? Who sent us down to Egypt in the first place? Who made the nation of the Mitzrayim, of the Egyptians, with so much hatred of the Jewish people that they put us in the worst conditions a person could possibly imagine, beating us in slavery for 100, 200 years, backbreaking labor. Who sent us into the gullus? Who sent us into that exile to begin with? And the answer, of course, is none other than Hashem. So why do we praise him on the night of the Seder, when at the end of the day, the whole miracle and the miraculous story, that itself is something almost that he had to do to rescue us and save us from the mess that he put us in the beginning? And this is a question that has bothered the minds of our sages and of the Jewish people for years and years and years, that he could have created the nation of the Jewish people any way that he wanted to. We were living peacefully in the land of Israel. We had all of Joseph and all of his brothers. We were a nation that had prided itself with already a couple of hundred years of history, going back to the days of Abraham, where he taught us to believe in Hashem, to believe in God. We knew how to live a life that would be dedicated to the service of God. We knew what it meant. We were ready to go into the land of Israel. Why send us down to Egypt in the first place? Make it so much easier for us. Suffering, slavery, hardships, challenges, difficulty, loss of life. Why? Why do that? In the Torah, it tells us a very interesting language when it speaks about the Mitzrayim, the land of Egypt, and everything that it put us through. And the verse says, V'yaschem lokach Hashem, Hashem took you out of Egypt, v'yoitzi eschem, and he removed you, mikor habarzel, from the iron crucible, from the fiery furnace, Mitzrayim, from Egypt, lihi yois loy la'am, in order that you should be his nation, nachla kayom hazeh, the inheritance until this very day. So the pasuk, the verse in the Torah tells us that Egypt is referred to as a kor habarzel. A kor habarzel is a fiery furnace, an iron crucible. Says Rashi, what does that mean? Hu kli shemezakekim bai es hazahav. It is the vessel, it's a furnace that refines gold. When they mine the gold out of the mountains and they take it out of the rocks over there, gold is not pure. There's purity that's inside of it, that's for sure. But there's dross, and there's sediment, and there's minerals that are not part of the gold. And the only way in which you could make that gold the pure 14 karat, 24 karat gold that you want it to be is if you stick it into the fire and you burn off all of the sediment and all of the extra stuff that is there, that weakens and lowers the level and lowers the quality of that gold. Says Rashi, you know what Egypt was for the Jewish people? Egypt was no less than that fiery furnace. It was the place in which the Jewish people went into servitude, into bondage, into slavery, into hardship. But every single step of the way, it was the crucible where the fires that God was allowing the Egyptians to bring upon us was refining us and cleansing us and removing from us the impurities that were inside of our nation. That itself is a chesed, is an act of kindness that Hashem did. For the only way that the golden hearts and the golden souls and the golden beauty of the Jewish people would be able to radiate and to shine is if all of the sediment and all the impurities and all of the dirt and the schmutz that was on our nation would be charred away and burned off by the iron crucible, by the kor habarzel. And that means, it must mean, that there was something within the Jewish people that caused us to have the schmutz, caused us to have the sediment, caused us to have the dirt that was on us, the impurities that were part of our nation, that Hashem said, it's not that I can't make you a nation in the land of Israel. It's not that I can't make you a nation and just bring you into beauty and to peace and to redemption right away. Of course, I can do whatever I want. I'm Hashem. If I want to make a virus that's going to affect the entire world, when everybody thinks that we are invincible, yes, I'll make the virus also that will affect the entire world. And in 3 weeks, the world will turn over just like that. Hashem can do anything. So if he could do the virus to the entire world, he certainly could have made our nation a nation without having to go into the slavery of Egypt. But Hashem says, you're gold. You're so pure. But there's impurities that are on you right now. And there's something that's surrounding the Jewish people. I have no choice. You must go down to the land of Egypt, and there you will be refined. And there you will become pure. And there you will form yourselves into the nation that will be for thousands and thousands of years, the Am HaNivcha, the chosen nation, that will always be beloved by me, says Hashem. Now, how did we get to Egypt? What was the first pathways that we took that took us out of the land of Israel, of Eretz Israel, where the Jewish people were? Yaakov Avinu was living in Israel. His children were all living in Israel. So how did we ever get down to Egypt in the first place? And that, of course, as all of you remember, is the sad story of Yosef and all of his brothers. His brothers were jealous of him. They saw his intrinsic and internal greatness. They saw the beauty and the zest that he had for ruchnius, for spirituality. They saw his chachma, his wisdom. They saw his leadership qualities. They saw that this was a man that was destined for a certain greatness that was chosen, min hashamayim, from the heavens, from God himself. And they also saw the way that their father Yaakov treated him. Gave him an extra coat, gave him extra TLC. He gave him extra love and care. And they were jealous of all of that. And so the brothers made a fateful error. And they decided, let's get rid of Yosef. Let's just get rid of him. As if he doesn't exist. We'll throw him in the pit. We'll throw him under the bus. We don't need to see him anymore. And they took their brother and they threw him into the pit. And they eventually whisked him out of there. And they put him on a caravan. And the caravan took Joseph down to the land of Egypt, known as Mitzrayim. And he goes down there for 22 years. And he becomes second in command. He raises up almost to the king of all of Egypt. He saves the entire region from starvation. And eventually the brothers have to come down to find their brother, Yosef. But they made a very big mistake. And that mistake meant that the Jewish people now had to be in Egypt. It wasn't Hashem's choice. We chose to go down because we failed in the way in which we treated our brother, the way in which we treated another Jew, the way in which we looked at the strengths and the potential and the beauty of the most beloved of the tribes, Joseph, Yosef. And we decided, no, we can't deal with that. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, once that you have done this to yourself, and you have brought upon yourself the impurities of hatred, the impurities of not appreciating the family that you come from, when you brought it upon yourself that you took somebody who was so beloved in the eyes of Hashem and you tried to get rid of him, that creates such an impurity amongst the Jewish people. Says God, I have no choice. Now, in order for me to get to the gold once again, to see all the beauty that's inside of your heart, to be able to make you and form you as a nation that's going to serve me, that's going to run after me, that's going to love me, that you're going to be an Am HaNivchar, a chosen nation, an Or L'Goyim, a light unto the nations. Now you have to go through the Kor HaBarzel, through the iron crucible, to cleanse and purify yourself from anything that is out there that is covering up the beautiful nature of the golden neshama of the souls that you have. So Hashem didn't send us to Egypt. We actually sent ourselves to Egypt. Hashem didn't force us into this iron crucible, into the burning cauldron over there. There was no other choice. There was no other way for it to happen. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his kindness and his wisdom, he allowed the events to play themselves out so that we would be worthy of becoming that nation that was so beloved and so golden and so glorious in his eyes, that eventually when the right time would come, that it was time for the Exodus, for the redemption, we are the nation that is going straight out of Egypt with signs and with wonders. The sea is splitting. Many years ago, there's a park over here in Encino that has a blacksmith shop. And I think one Sunday a month, I don't know if they do it anymore, certainly now during these times or not, but there was a blacksmith shop where they had an old-fashioned blacksmith, and he would take the iron, the metal, and he'd put it on his tools over there, and then he had an iron crucible, he had a fiery furnace, and he would go and he would put the metal into the fire, and you watch the metal, it's like bending, and it's getting soft. But he knows exactly the right time to remove the metal from the fire so that he can shape it and he can form it into anything that he wants. And after he shapes it and he forms it, he puts it into water. The water makes it hardened and firm in that shape that it's in right now. And then it cools off, and then forever, as long as it's protected, it's going to remain in that shape and form. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, is the blacksmith of Klal Yisrael. And He takes us into the iron crucible, and He shapes, and He forms, and He develops us, and He makes us a nation like no other. And He wants to fix up the imperfections that were there. Sometimes it burns, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it hurts. But at the end of the day, the result is that we are formed and shaped exactly the way that the blacksmith of the world, Hashem, wants us to be. And then He puts us in the water, which is like when the Jewish people went through the splitting of the sea. That was the water that solidified our state of being. And that's why we came through the Yamsu, through the splitting of the sea. And it says, Vayaminu ba'Hashem u'Moshe Avda, we believed in God and His servant Moshe. And then we become the nation that's going to go on into history as always being the chosen, precious Am Segula, the treasure that God took and He shaped and He formed. But remember, He did it for a reason, because we needed it. And if we would not have needed it, He wouldn't have let it happen. We find a similar idea that it says that the reason that God sends challenges to each and every one of us in all different areas of our life is because Hashem wants to test us. Why does a teacher test a student? They want to see if the student knows the information. Why does the trainer at the gym test the person that he is working with putting a little extra weight onto the barbell? Because he wants to test the muscle strength of that person to see if they're able to do it. Why does a person training for a marathon push themselves more and more and more as they go through the training? They want to see, how far can I run? How much stamina do I have? Will I make it to the finish line? The reason that Hashem tests each and every one of us in our spiritual and our psychological and our physiological and our physical challenges in life is because he wants to see, or he wants that we should be able to see what it is that we really have inside of us. And the entire challenge of the shibud of the slavery of Egypt, the entire bondage that we went through, all of the hardships that we experienced while we were there, it was all for one reason. Hashem wanted us to realize how much fortitude and how much strength and how much glory we have inside of ourselves. How will we rise to the situation and overcome that which is pushing against us? And I was thinking that perhaps this is something that we have to keep in mind over the next period of history, because we don't know. If you listen to the governor in California, if you listen to the governor in New York, if you listen to the president of the United States, nobody knows how long this current situation is going to last. Will it be 2 weeks? Will it be 4 weeks? Will it be 4 months? Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. Only he knows. But one thing we have to keep in mind, and that is that he would never put us into a situation that is not there to teach us internal lessons about ourselves and what we could actually accomplish during this time. If a person will sit around and watch the news all day long and get filled with the panic and the fear that the news is so good at teaching us, then we'll fail to miss the lesson that we're supposed to take. If a person will be in their homes together with their wife and their children and their families, we are forced into family time. What an amazing, beautiful opportunity. But each one will peel off into the corner on their phones, on their iPads, on their Nintendos, doing whatever they're doing over there. And no one's talking and no one's spending time together. And nobody is hugging each other. It's the only people you have left in the world you can hug is your children and your family. And we'll end up missing the opportunities. Then we failed the challenge that Hashem has given us. If we don't learn and we don't study during this time, and if we don't pray to God to help us and save us from the mess that the world is in right now, then we miss the opportunities that Hashem has placed in front of us to show ourselves how much we actually do believe, to show ourselves how much we could override or ride through the storm that is taking place, where the world is becoming paralyzed right now in fear, and we can walk around peacefully, and we can still be happy, and we can still act normally. Not that, again, of course, we have to follow the rules that are being set in front of us, because we don't want to do anything that is irresponsible. That's for sure. But who says you can't smile? And who says you can't sing a happy song? And who says you can't love each other in the house? And who says you can't call somebody who you know is quarantined and wish them a good day and speak to them for a few minutes on the phone just to brighten up? Who says you can't do that? Of course we can. And the more that we will use these challenging times to rise above the challenges and act like that nation that we always have been, so then perhaps the message of the coronavirus will not be for naught. As difficult and as painful and as uncertain as it is, but if we've been placed into solitude, then that means, as we said in the very beginning of this class, the solitude is a blessing, because in the quiet times of our life, we're able to hear ourselves. And if you can hear yourself, know that you are a Tselem Elokim, you are a piece of God also. And therefore the peace of Hashem that is in you will just gravitate back to its creator and to its owner. And that is God himself. And therefore you'll be able to hear the voice that we don't hear all the time, that's drowned out by so many other things. We'll be able to hear his voice, and we'll know what we're supposed to do during this special time. So Achdus, unity, is something that unfortunately brought the brothers and into great dire straits where we were brought into the land of Egypt, and the lack of unity is what pulled us apart and put us into the iron crucible to begin with. And therefore we have to take the opportunity over here to use the solitude to make ourselves stronger and better and appreciative of the greatness that we have inside of ourselves, to see the beauty of our spouses, to see the beauty of our children, to see the beauty of our families, to spend time helping others the best way that we possibly can. If you're all stuck at home and you can't go any place, you can't daven any place else except your house, and you can't learn anywhere but your house, make your house into a place that is filled with holiness as well, and use the time wisely. We can even look at it as an iron crucible that's refining and getting rid of the schmutz that's all around us all the time to make us the golden nation that we really and we truly are. I'll leave you with one short story. It's a story I've been telling over for many, many years, but I don't know exactly who is watching on the virtual Beis Midrash over here, so we'll tell it anyway. Many years ago, there was a yeshiva in New York. It is still there. It's called Shar Yoshev. And Shar Yoshev had a wonderful Rosh Yeshiva whose name was of Shlomo Freifeld. And in these times, in the 1960s and the early 70s, he was very proactive about grabbing the youth of that generation who was so motivated to be spiritual, and he tried so hard to show them what spirituality was really all about. So one day he put an ad in the newspaper that the yeshiva was looking for a janitor. And there was a person who got the newspaper, and he was a relatively young man who had grown up in a religious family, gone to yeshiva all of his life, and at a certain point changed his direction, and he left the pathways of yeshiva. And he's sitting there in his room, and he gets the newspaper. He needed a job. He's looking at the classifieds, and he sees Yeshiva Shar Yoshev looking for a janitor. Shiva, I know yeshiva. Once upon a time I was there. Janitor, I could clean. And he calls up, and he makes an appointment, and he comes in the next day to the yeshiva, and he walks in with his long hair and his bell-bottom jeans and his tie-dye shirt, and he walks into the yeshiva. And who does he have a meeting with? Lo and behold, the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Freifeld himself. And Rav Freifeld begins asking him about his background, his experience in life, and he realizes that this young man, once upon a time, was a regular yeshiva bacher like the boys learning in his yeshiva. So Rav Freifeld looks at him and he says, you know what? I know you came in for the janitor job, but I was just thinking, I have a different job in mind for you. See, I have a group of young men that came to the yeshiva, they're Bali Tshuva, they never learned Gemara before, and I really need a Rebbe that could understand them and connect with them. And when you walked in, I thought to myself, you are the perfect Rebbe for this group of boys. So he looks at him and he says, do you see what you're looking at over here? No, I know. But I really believe that you have what it takes to be the right Rebbe for these young men. So tomorrow morning, he says, do me a favor, come. You have a Gemara at home still? He said, I have some. He says, you have Bava Metzia? He said, yes. Come with Bava Metzia, second chapter of Bava Metzia. I want you to teach these boys that Gemara. Okay. Comes in the yeshiva the next day, Gemara under his hand, dressed the same, no yarmulke. The Rebbe with no yarmulke walks in the yeshiva. So Rav Freifeld sees him, and he says, come on in. Brings him into the Beis Midrash, into the study hall, sits him down with all of these 5 or 10 boys that are just becoming religious. They're all wearing yarmulkes. The Rebbe's not wearing a yarmulke. So, but he teaches them. And he teaches them, and he enjoys every minute. He goes home that day. He says, wow, that was pretty amazing. Gets dressed the next day to go out to yeshiva. He's a Rebbe there. He wants to teach. He says, you know what? Now that I'm a Rebbe in yeshiva and I'm teaching Torah, probably I should put a yarmulke on my head. And he puts on a yarmulke. And he goes to yeshiva. And he begins teaching again. And he loves it. Next day he's getting dressed. He says, you know what, I'm a Rebbe. Probably I should dress a little bit more respectful. And he puts on a white button-down shirt, still has his jeans, goes off to yeshiva. And so on and so forth. Every single day, he does more and more and more till he cuts the hair, comes in a suit and a tie, and he begins teaching the class as if he's been a Rebbe in a yeshiva forever. And from that experience, this man, who was once so disconnected and far off, went full circle and came back to being the religious Jew that he once was. The legend of Shar Yoshev is that 40 or 50 years later, this man is still a Rebbe there in that yeshiva. And according to one of the stories that I heard, I actually know who that person is. So what did Rav Freifeld see, the Rosh Yeshiva, when this man walked in to his office? He didn't see the bell bottoms. He didn't see the long hair. He didn't see the tie-dye shirt. He saw inside of all of that is a golden neshama that just needs to be refined. How am I going to refine it? So Rav Freifeld didn't put him in the iron crucible. Rav Freifeld put him in the warmth of love, where this young man was able to once again believe in the power that he had inside of himself. We have a great opportunity during this time of the year, during this time in history, to keep finding the beloved golden elements that are inside of ourselves, to bond together with our spouses, with our families, with Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, however we're going to do it, whether it's going to be online, whether it's going to be on the phone, whether it's going to be in the interactions that we have in the markets, whatever it might be. Even with a mask on your face, you can still smile and be nice to another person. May we be zeicher in Yirtzeh Hashem, may we merit that Hashem, in His infinite wisdom and His infinite kindness and His infinite mercy, sees how many people in the world are suffering and sees how many people in the world are trying to make a difference in a better way, to create the unity, to create the warmth, to create the love, to create the golden beauty that exists inside of us, and bring the salvation and bring the redemption and bring the healing much faster than all the science experts are predicting, God forbid, so that by the time that the Yom Tov of Pesach comes around, we should be surrounded by anyone that we want to have at our Seder table, to enjoy the company, to enjoy the warmth, to enjoy the love. And we should do that all together, sitting by the Seder of Mashiach in Yerushalayim HaKodesh, in the holy city of Jerusalem, b'mheira v'yameinu, speedily and in our days. Have a wonderful night.